Она уже задняя скорость включена, как ты только представь, нахуй. А не то, что она упала, начинаешь дрочилкой, блядь, выключать скорость, блядь.
Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder, it is time to have a look at some planned BR changes for June 2020. Along with the economy changes that we saw a few days ago, there normally is a few BR changes, and that's basically what we're looking at here. Now, on top of this as well, there is a discussion forum that you can go to on the War Thunder forums, where you can discuss whether you think another vehicle should have its BR changed. In the future, this has had an impact on the BR changes, so make sure to have a look at it. Also, make sure to get involved in the discussion, so therefore you can have your voice heard. In this video, we're going to be going through Air Realistic, Ground Realistic, and Fleet Arcade, because basically those are the game modes that I play, so therefore I'll know more about them. Starting off with Aviation, we have the P40C. Now the P40C is going up to 2.7 from 2.3. This is not a surprise since the other two P40s in the American tree are already at 2.7, the P40E and the P40F10, and the P40C is very, very similar to those aircraft. Yeah, the differences are, you know, it's slightly weaker in certain areas, but it's really nothing that should affect its BR. The next one is the ME410 B2U4, and the ME410 B2U4 is also a machine which is looking to get grouped with the changes with the A1U4. It's one of those machines which has access to the 50mm BK5 cannon, and it pretty much relies on it wholly to be useful. The BK5 cannon does have access to HVAP, which pens 129mm, but one of the problems with the ME410 B2U4 is, well, it has a bigger brother called the B6R3, which is just kind of better than it in every way, so it gets really overshadowed. The fire rate of the 50mm is really low as well, and also with the A1U4, which has the same cannon, which has the same, rounds on it, the HVAP is at 3.7, the difference between them is not that great, so why is the B2U4 at 4.3? Well, it's getting lowered to 4.0 now, so that should make a little bit more sense. So since the only difference between them is really minor flight characteristics, and the fact that they're getting grouped anyway means that a lot of people, I think, are just going to go past it. The next vehicle is the G55S, the premium of Italy, which came out and took over the world, if I'm quite honest, when it came to Regia Aeronautica back in the day. And the G55S has been good for many years since it's been out. You know, the combination of having the three MG151s, the combination of having the wonderful torpedo on it whenever you get on either Norway or whenever you get into naval battles. It's one of those planes which does everything well. The only thing that it doesn't do as well as other machines is its high altitude performance, and since a lot of the meta of Air Realistic has relied on medium to high altitude engagement, then move down to medium altitude, then go down to low altitude, the G55S is really good in all those areas. The only thing that happens with the G55S is if you have somebody who flies high in an American plane, then G55S sometimes can't keep up, but that's really about it. And also, being able to fly like that perfectly as an American pilot is a lot harder to do than just to turny-turn, swervy-swerve, which the G55S is able to do. So, not surprised to see it go up. It is a monster, just like a lot of the Italian tech tree. It is easily the best fighter line tech tree in the game. The P51D10 on the other side of things is going down to 4.3. This was kind of a surprise to me because the P51s do hold a very special place for me. There's some of the first aircraft which I really started just doing incredibly well in when, it came to the game at rank 4. I do also have to note that when it comes to the D10 though, going down isn't really a surprise because of the fact that the D5 is already at 4.3. The only question is now, is the D30 going to come down? Is the D30 going to go to 4.7, or are we just happy with the P51D10 going down to 4.3 to meet its brother? The Act3U is also going down again. I'm pretty sure this vehicle came into the game at 6.0 or 6.3, if I remember, and it's also getting switched places with the Act9 UT. It's obviously getting switched because the UT is 5.7 and the 3U is going down to 5.3. So just want to make it so the linear progression through the tree is just pretty much, as simple as, going by BR. Now, the Act3U, I remember when I played it back in the day because I spaded it, but I spaded it at a level which is probably, a little bit higher than it is now. I played it when it was that higher BR before it got dropped, and I didn't think it was actually that bad. It had obvious problems with its underpowered engine, it had obvious problems with its guns, because generally when you look at these vehicles, that's what happens. The major issue with them is the general problem of using the Soviet guns to great effect, because it only has 220mm and 240 rounds, and as somebody who has been spading a lot of the jets the last few days, like the MiG-9s, the Yak-23, the LA-174, now I'm onto the Yak-30, I'm really hurting when it comes to the amount of ammunition on these planes. It's a direct contrast to something such as the Americans, where you can just 50 cal hold the mouse down for about a minute and you still have 1,000 rounds of ammunition left. So yeah, I can definitely see the issues with the Act3U, with the fact that its engine doesn't feel as powerful as it should, and also the guns not being as reliable. It's one of the main issues I have with the LA9, if I'm honest. And hopefully there is a thread on the forum which is actually talking about, the inconsistency of cannons in the game, and there are some which have been flagged as underpowered, or in quotations underpowered, and a lot of the Soviet guns are there. So hopefully that means in the future they'll be given a bit of a bigger bang, or just, if I'm honest, when they connect instead of, giving puffs of smoke and all of that. The G91 pre-series is going down to 8.3. This is not really a surprise for me, and the reason for that is because whenever you have vehicles which are directly not as good as another machine, such as the G91 pre-series compared to the R1, the R4, and the R3, it's very weird to see it at the same BR. It's one of those kind of weird contrasts that we have, where the question to play the pre-series is always followed with, well, why not just play the R1? Do you see what I mean? Where the R1 is just a better version of the pre-series. So why not just play the R1 in the Italian tree? Or why not just play the pack R4 so you don't have to worry about upgrading the pre-series? So now maybe this gives it a chance to be able to be played. Also at the same time, the Italian's got the CL13 Mark IV, so there's a lot of options over the pre-series right now, but knocking its BR makes it a little bit more nice to see. Now, when I was playing the last few days at 8.3, a lot of my matches were at 8.7, 9.0 top anyway, and a few at 9.3, which were kind of insane. But the 8.7, 9.0 ones were the majority. I wasn't really getting down to that much. So therefore, I don't think this BR change makes too much of a difference. I think it will just mean that every so often, you won't face as many 9.3s, which will be very positive for the pre-series and give it a reason to exist. The J32B is going up to 9.7, the J32B being, of course, the Swedish jet. Unfortunately, I don't have too much experience with this. What I've heard of it is that it is an incredibly powerful machine, especially with the guns that it has and the general power of the engine. Very good acceleration, but apart from that, I can't really comment too much on about it, so I apologize. The G91YS is going up to 10.0, so that thing is still being a monster in the game, and it's not really a surprise. It's an incredibly flexible fighter. It's got pretty much everything you would want, with the two 30mm defers on it, and also, of course, the AIM-9Bs. The only issue with the G91 G91S as it goes up in BR is the speed issue. So the G91YS has really good acceleration, but it doesn't have a great top speed. So being able to compete with it or against it is going to change now that it's going up to 10.0, because if you didn't know, in Aerialistic there is a barrier, or there is like a pseudo barrier, let's say. So there is a pseudo barrier put at 9.7. That's why the majority of games, if you're playing 10.0 or 10.3, you only face 10.0 or 10.3 vehicles, and then you have like the wall, and then you have 9.7, 8.7. The idea of this wall, I think, was to put a difference between like the supersonics and everything else, but I'm not entirely sure if that has actually worked or not, because we've seen obviously all the F104s take over, but all those are going up in BR anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. But if that wall still exists, the G91YS is going to be so outclassed in terms of speed and probably acceleration too. It's going to become what the Meteor F Mark 8 used to be back in the day, where the Meteor F Mark 8, you know, the clipped wing Meteor, the Mark 8 G41K, it was one of those machines which was really slow and still is kind of slow compared to its competition, but you would get yourself out of situations because of your defensive flying. You would burn the energy of the enemy, and then you would be able to capitalize. So that's pretty much what you're going to have to do with the G91. Whether that's going to happen or not is another story, but we'll have to see. It's much harder flying that way, but there are a lot of aircraft which are really maneuverable, which can do that. So we'll just have to see how the YS does it. I don't think it should have gone up, but yeah. The F104s, so all the ones which were 9.7 are going up to 10.0. This will hopefully alleviate some of the matchmaking from 9.7 to 8.7. All of these are Mach 2 capable. They all have a pretty decent, primary weaponry. Secondary weaponry is a little bit suspect, but overall, since these changes have been made so quickly, I think it shows that there was an oversight when it came to putting these in the game at that BR. So yeah, the F104J as well is going up to 10.3. I believe this is the Chinese one, which also, oh no, it's not the Chinese one, it's the Italian one, right? Let's see, nope, that's the S. Japan? Is it Japan? Yes, it's Japan. There we go. Japan has the one with the AIM-9Es and the RWR. So, yeah, that's going up to 10.3. I think it's correct that all of these are in the top BR bracket. It was very odd to see a lot of them at 9.7 instead of up there, but it's nice. It's fixed now, or it will be fixed, in the coming weeks. The other one now to talk about is obviously the Su-7B, because the Su-7B has the same speeds as the F-104. It's probably not as good in a combat role, in an air-to-air combat role, because of the fact that it doesn't have the secondary weapons to really line it up. Like, it doesn't have access, of course, to the air-to-air missiles and stuff, but I think it's going to become a problem, kind of like how the Vautours used to, kind of like how the B-57s used to, where they're just going to be able to outrun everything. It's just going to be really annoying to fight in something like Aerialistic. So yeah, I don't think it should go up in BR. It's just something to think about and worry about while we go forward. At least something to keep an eye on. Moving on to ground vehicles, it is time to talk about the LVR BV701. This is the new Swedish SAM that is in the game, and it's going up to 9.3, so it's showing how useful it is. I personally have had some positive experiences against it. It seems pretty good. It seems like it's very much a niche vehicle, and also, since it was at 9.0, you could kind of just sit it at the back of the map and wait for your Swedish allies to, conk on everything, and then you could just keep the air clear. It was overall a very decent machine. The 279 is going up to 8.7. Not really a surprise here. The 279 is a whole W machine, and if you don't know how to deal with it, especially if you're in a 7.7, which could happen quite a lot when it comes to the 279, because it was an 8.3 vehicle, you couldn't really deal with it. It's the 279 is one of those key machines which You know how I've talked about in the past where there's a reason why Soviet heavy tanks kind of disappeared. You know, we don't actually have technically the last Soviet heavy tank yet, but I'm sure we will eventually. It's a modernization of the T-10M, and it's kind of insane. But the problem is, the reason why heavy tanks disappeared is because the round effectiveness of many vehicles became more than what actually happened to the armor values. So it just became pointless to create these vehicles which were incredibly well armored and incredibly well angled, because stuff like APF-SDS was, you know, starting to come around. Stuff like incredibly powerful chemical rounds started to come around. And then we moved into like the composite and also, you know, stuff like the Chobham armor area of things, like layered armor levels. And that's where a lot of the strength came from, instead of just thickness overall. And the 279 represents that old feeling, you know, the fact that it's designed to stop pretty much every chemical round in existence. And if you, as a 7.7, the majority of the time are slinging stuff like chemical rounds as your main weapon, the Heat FS especially that you don't have a stabilizer, so he's always going to get the first shot off at you, and also the 279 has higher muzzle velocity and great pen, it's not fun to face at all. And that is generally the issue between like 8.7 and 7.7. 7.7 usually lacks stabilizers and also APF-SDS, where 8.7 has stabilizers and APF-SDS. So yeah, it's one of those issues, but the 279 going up, this solves one of these issues, but it doesn't stop stuff like the T-10M existing, which do pretty much the same thing as the 279, maybe just in a little bit less abundance. The Centauro Romore is also going down to 9.0. I think this is fine. It makes sense. The machine itself, I don't really see too different to actually the normal Centauro, which finds itself at 8.0. So yeah, I mean, going down means hopefully it'll get played a little bit more instead of the other 9.3s that are around. The only issue with it going down is if you have a look at the 9.0 lineup for Italy, it doesn't exist. The only 9.0 there is the OF40 MTCA, so therefore people will use the Romore as a backup to the MTCA, but that's really it. So there needs to be something else in that lineup which is a little bit more useful, because you can't even bring, you know, like 9.0 planes with it. You can bring like maybe the G91s, but the G91s, unless you have the premium one, aren't too good in ground realistic, so that's a bit of a problem. The CM11 is going down to 9.0. I like this change. The CM11, as somebody who has spent like a month grinding a lot of the M48s and also a lot of the M60s, one thing that has become very apparent to me, especially since I played the T72, spaded it, I think, let's see, what were my overall stats in the T72? There we go. So my overall stats in the T72 were 126 ground kills, 92 deaths, 49% win rate. So overall, pretty positive KD, but not a great win rate. One thing I realized is how big the M48 and M60 series of vehicles are. They are huge. They are massive targets, and guess what? They are massive thermal signatures as well. So when you have a vehicle at 9.3 like the CM11, which is a conglomeration of an M48 and an M60, with some very dodgy ARA on it, which is the majority of the time facing stuff such as you know, APF-SDS, then yeah, it's not really a surprise that the machine's going down. The M48s and M60s in the game have a really bad stock grind, and the CM11 is the same, but it's at least a little bit better because it has access to M735. It does have a crazy round now at 9.0, but it should be fine. It's also, I believe, going down in research cost, so that's really nice as well. It may not be going down, actually. It may be the other ones which are going down, so I apologize for that, but it's still only 250k, so that's not too bad. The Type 16 is also going down, so this is keeping it in line with the CM11. Once again, the problem with it going down is it doesn't really have a lineup around it. You can run it with the GE Kai, the Type 74, but that's, you know, a premium once again. It'll be nice to see stuff like the Type 16 and the Romor used more in a scouting role than before. So at least we've got that going for it, you know. At least there's stuff like that, which is lovely. The ZSD63 is going up to 4.0. That is the new AA for China. This isn't a surprise. If you've ever played the ZSD63, let's just say my KD in it against ground vehicles is positive. So if we just take away the air killing capability, it's a wonderful tank destroyer. And the only problem it has is its reload, and its reload can be managed, not against aircraft though. So I think if it was just being purely used as an anti-air machine, you know, if they just gave it HE, it would be kind of bad, unless you were only hurting one target at once. But overall, when it comes to ZSD, I think its BR going up is justified. It just means that it gets it out of that 3-7 lineup, which is really strong, which kind of hurts, but it should be okay being up to it. The SDKFZ 6.2 is going down to 2.7, not a surprise. You know, it's got a low... well, it's not a low firing 20, but it's not exactly the fastest thing in the world. Sorry, it's got a 37. It's got quite a low firing 37, and at 3.0, I don't know, it just seems a little bit too high. So putting it down to 2.7 means that you can run it with a few nicer lineups like the Puma and the Panzer III J1. Hopefully it gets a little bit more play. The M15A1 CGMC is the same. I remember when we were playing World War mode and the 37 was just busted. It didn't actually line up with the 50s, which was kind of hilarious. But once they fix that, it's okay. The main issue with the M15 is when you have two different caliber guns firing and they're supposed to have the same lead, it's nearly impossible to be able to hit a target with both of them. So it's always been better just to use the M16 CGMC. So yeah. The IKV-103 goes down once again, not a surprise, that thing is horrific. The IKV-103 is designed for infantry support, and it definitely feels like it's designed for infantry support. Yes, it has a round which pens 400mm, but that doesn't matter if you get killed by everything under the sun, especially machine guns. I won't be surprised if by the time this is over, this thing is down to like 3.0 or something. The IKV-103 is absolute trash. The only thing it's got going for it is that it's small and that it's kind of fast. Both of these factors don't really matter when you're a tank destroyer with low velocity and you have to be able to attack targets. The PVK-2 goes up to 4.0, not a surprise. PVK-V2 is very strong. It's got a really, really good gun on it, and since its platform, when it comes to its turrets, has really good turret rotation, has really good gun depression, and it's also kind of hard to one-shot the thing because of just how the placement of the whole thing is. The only problem is that it is susceptible at being killed from the air, but because of, you know, because of how the turret is, you can get some really nice bino looks out of it without having to expose yourself. I think overall it's pretty nice for a vehicle. I really wouldn't be surprised if it goes up again. My stats in it are kind of ludicrous, so yeah, it is a nice vehicle. The M47-105-55, that's going down to 7.3. So that brings it in line with the other M47s with the 90. I think that's okay. I don't think the 105 adds too much to the M47. The main issue with the M47 is the gun depression and also the lack of stability on the gun. And both of these aren't really fixed by the 105. And also, as usual, when it comes to, you know, minor nation changes, moving it to 7.3 doesn't really change too much because now it just means you can run it with the R3T106 and nothing else. I suppose you can try and run it with the Vampire FB52A, so there is an option there to be able to, you know, fly it around a bit, but overall it's not something to really write home about when it comes to being able to play it. I've nearly spaded the thing. I'm 2 modifications off finishing it, and it is so, I think it's -20 for me because I really dislike the M47 platform. The T62M is going down to 8.7. Jesus Christ. The 279 and the T62M at the same BR, and then you have have the T-55AM, which is an 8.7 at 8.3. They're really giving the Soviets a lot of tools right now to be really, really powerful. And the T-62M, if you didn't know, is one of those vehicles which has never really been meta. When it got added, it was my personal dark horse for the update, but it was never really realized because it just got annihilated by helicopters. It's actually a pretty fun vehicle. It's got a good stabilizer, decent maneuverability, pretty good armor, but it's let down by one single factor and one single factor alone: the reload. The reload is 10.6 seconds. And since it's a 4-man crew, once you lose your loader, this thing takes ages to reload. And with a 10-second reload already, which is the lowest when it comes to a lot of the vehicles around it, it's just not good enough to be able to fight alongside stuff. But at 8.7, maybe that makes it a little bit easier, because it makes stuff like its armor a little bit stronger, so it should be okay. Running it with the 279 is going to be really, really fun. What the Soviets need is an 8.7 CAS plane, if we're honest. Like that's the thing that's missing from the lineup, and that's the thing that a lot of other nations have. So yeah, now moving all of these are nice, and now you have a very solid 8.3 BR and a very solid 8.7 BR, but still, the issue is the CAS plane for the Soviets. The Leopard 2K is going down to 9.3. So I've played against a lot of Leopard 2Ks, and they look like they're constantly on they have ADD. So they're just like flipping their turrets around, not knowing what's going on, using their 20s to just shoot things. But I remember back in the day, the 2K was a menace. It was an incredibly good vehicle, which was able to do pretty much whatever it wanted. And the reason for this is because rounds would bounce off its front all the damn time. But the Leopard 2K going down to 9.3 means that now, once again, Germany has a very strong 9.3 lineup. They had a very strong 9.0 lineup before, then the KPZ-70 got brought up, so now you're going to be able to run the KPZ-70, the Leopard 2K, and something like the Radkampfwagen, or something like the M48 Super if you want to bring that in. That's going down to 250,000 RP to research, so that's going to be pretty fun. Overall, the 2K should do really, really well at 9.3. It has all the bells and whistles you want. It's got the Rheinmetall. It's got access to the DM13 as a rank 1 modification. It has access to the laser rangefinder. Has access to a 20 on the top. Has access to incredibly bouncy armor. If this thing is not able to do well at 9.3, I don't even know what to say. Like, this thing should take over the game at 9.3, and I actually disagree with the decision of putting it at 9.3 because it is such a good vehicle. And then we have BR Decompression. There you go. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. People can stop talking about it for at least 2 weeks. We have a lot of the top tier vehicles. So the 2A5 Leclerc, Ariete, PSO, the STRV 122, the T80U, the M1A2 Abrams, and the Challenger 22F. Are all going up to 10.7. There you go. We have a new BR. Whoop whoop. So this is probably going to change the meta, as it always does, creating new BR brackets: 10.7 to 9.7, 9.3 to 8.3, 8.0 to 7.0, and we'll see what happens. It'll probably make 9.3 incredibly dominant, especially for the Germans, because guess what? You just moved down the 2K, and you've got the G91R3 there, and you've got the KPZ there. Yeah, I already went through this like 3 months ago with their 9.0 lineup. I don't need to go through it again with their 9.3 lineup. Thank you. So when it comes to, the top vehicles moving up, this is obviously good for the game in general. That means there's a little bit more spread. Will it really change anything when it comes to matchmaking? Not right now, but maybe in the future it will. And also, there is definitely something to be said that, an M1A2 Abrams is better than an M1A1, a T80U is much better than a T80B, so therefore it is nice to see that. This will give a little bit of breathing space to, as I said, 9.3s, and one I would recommend is the T72A. It also gives a little bit of breathing space to machines like the Chieftain Mark 10, even though it was not in the top BR bracket before, it was in like the meta next bracket, so hopefully it'll be fine. We'll have to see how this affects stuff, but I think this is well needed, and hopefully Gaijin has decided the player base is large enough at top tier to be able to put through these changes. The Type 90B and the Type 90 are going up to 10.3, so they're just following suit. When it comes to the 10.3s going up to 10.7, and then the Roland and the Flarak are going down to 9.7. So these are the two SAM launchers, and I mean, that's fine. It doesn't really make a difference, if I'm honest. They're either going to be able to be used at top tier or not, and right now the Flarak and the Roland are in a pretty bad place, but that's just because of the way that they're built and their capabilities. One of the issues with the two vehicles is the fact that they were supposed to get scouting in a changelog, but it seems like there's a little issue or something where they don't all have scouting. Now, I don't know whether they've been given scouting now, but I remember looking yesterday and the vehicles didn't have it, so hopefully that's changed. The BMP-2M, the Chrysanthema, so the new vehicle which has the ground radar, that is going down to 9.3. I have actually seen Chrysanthemas take over my games when I was playing the T72, and they took over them in a pretty simple way. They were actually able, in a night battle, to use their thermals and their radar to annihilate pretty much everybody on the other side of the map. But whenever it came to a day battle, they got killed by a plane. Because they have no armor, and guess what? G91R3 exists. So yeah, seeing it go down, I think will give players more of an opportunity to play it, which I think is good. The BMP-2M is also going down. I don't really have an opinion on this vehicle since I haven't played it. The ones I've seen played have run in like headless chickens and got blown up by MBTs. So we'll have to see how that goes. The Valentine Mark 11 is going down to 2.7. The Valentine Mark 11 is now, it's the one with the 75, right? So 2.7, you have, I suppose, the Crusader 3, so you can run it with that, and the AEC AA. So you do actually have a pretty solid lineup with it. But why is the Mark 11 going down to 2.7 if the Mark 9 Valentine is staying up at 3.3? Surely those two vehicles should, be only 0.3 BR from each other because of their capabilities. Another thing is the Mark 11 being at 2.7 and the Mark 1 being at 2.7. Are we having a giggle, mate? I think the Mark 1 should go down to 2.3 as well, as an extra addition. The Panther D is also moving down to 5.3. So now it's joining the Tiger H1. I think that's fine. The Panther D is definitely the weakest Panther, and after all the other ones got moved down to 5.7, it makes sense to put this one on the lower ebb because of the fact that it is worse. It's also got a terrible shock trap on it. It has a really bad turret traverse, and as I said, there's no reason to use it if you have the other German Panthers because of the fact that they moved down the Panther A a while back. So it's just kind of just sat there, and if you have Ersatz M10, which still should be a 6.0 vehicle, by the way, there's no reason to use the Panther D at all. So moving it down, at least it gives it a use. Hopefully we'll see what it comes of it. I'd like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Battling Bacon, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Conte Baraka, Daniel Stanton, Elove Goat, Jay Wilt, Martinez, Trigger Hippie, Universe, Eugens Terry, and also I'm Devilish and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.